Hey everyone, it's Tuesday.
And you know what that means.
I'm
And
Alex,
I'm Amber.
and this is another episode of True Crime and Chill. All right, welcome back, everyone. Okay, I think I can speak for both Amber and I when we say that we missed you guys a lot. However, we both really need to take a short hiatus to kind of get our lives in order because stuff happens. A lot of people don't really realize the work and dedication that we put into doing these episodes every week, and that's okay because not everybody needs to understand it. But sometimes we all just need a break, and even more so when we have a lot of stuff going on in our personal lives. I know that Amber and I need the hiatus for sure because we both want to be able to be in the right mindset for these cases and be able to give them to you guys in a real and honest way without it sounding forced. I ended up starting a new job recently, and I'm really excited for it. Once I get a little further into it, I'll give a little more details and stuff. And even though we are back, it's kind of in a different way. We're going to be kind of doing one episode every other week just until I get better at editing because I need to learn how to do that. And then once I do, we'll get back to our regular every week episode schedule type thing going on. So
Yeah, but we did notice, we were seeing your comments. We were getting new likes on the page, new subscribers, comments on our videos. So it's not that we didn't see you guys. It's just, like me with my business, it got busy. And so I had to
she
handle
blew up.
that. We had some personal family stuff, like my dad's been in and out of the hospital, like just it's stuff like that. So we really appreciate your patience with us while we sort of navigated this really tumultuous time in both of our lives.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy because everything just kind of exploded at once, and I was like, it was weird. It was really weird, but I'm really excited to get back to doing this, especially because our 2-year anniversary is next month.
Yeah, it
But
is.
like I said, we'll get to more on that later. But we are back. We are ready to start again. And this week's case is about the disappearance and murder of Holly Lynn Bobo.
Let's get to it.
Okay, so Holly Lynn Bobo was born October 12th, 1990, to Dana and Karen Bobo. She was the younger sister of Clint, who was actually 5 years older than her. Um, Holly lived a pretty normal life in the rural town of Darden, Tennessee. It's located about an hour and a half outside of Nashville for any of my Tennessee folks who are here with me. Um, it's so small that the 2010 census at the time clocked it at just under 400 people. Like, it's tiny. So it actually so everybody basically knows each other in this town. Everybody knows everybody's everything. And it's kind of roped into Parsons, Tennessee, as the towns are so close together. Like, literally, it's a 5-minute drive from Darden to Parsons. And Parsons is kind of like the bigger town where everybody goes and does all the fun stuff and everything. And that's actually where Holly was going to college because University of Tennessee had a campus in Parsons. And so she, instead of living at the actual university and stuff, she was living at home with her parents because, college life, got to save money and everything. And she was studying nursing. She was doing really good. She was excited. She's described by family and friends as being a friendly, empathetic girl who she just loved to help people, which is one of the reasons why she went into nursing. Um, her closest family members remember her being like extremely funny. Like, it really wasn't something that you noticed. Like, because when you met her, she was very happy and bright and cheerful and stuff. But once you started getting to know her, like, she was really funny. Like, she was hilarious. Um, so that was just something that everybody just remembers fondly about her. She was actually in a committed relationship with her boyfriend, Drew, for over 2 years. And he had actually given her a promise ring, too. So she was really excited about life.
That's really sweet.
Right? Like, I remember when you feel like that, you meet somebody and you want to spend the rest of your life with them and everything, and they're so cute and happy and stuff. And Drew was well loved by all of Holly's friends and everything. They were actually introduced by a mutual friend's mom. So yeah, like, everybody was connected in this town. It was insane.
Don't know
So
what
the
that's like.
Bobo, right? Like, hello, Port Angeles. So the Bobo home was on this huge property. I mean, like, and it was a gorgeous home and everything. It was surrounded by woods. It had a really long driveway, dirt roads. Like, it was like a small lake next to it. In pictures, it kind of looked like a pond, but it's actually described as a small lake. And so the neighbors were very few and far between, as it usually is out there. And like I said before, both Holly and Clint were still living at home with their parents. So on April 13th, 2011, Clint was actually at home because he had a class that got canceled that day. So he got to sleep in and just kind of, I remember how that felt, where it's like, oh yeah, no school and everything. But Holly had a really important test at her school in Parsons for her nursing class. So her friend who actually sat next to her, the entire time she was in school and she was doing the classes and stuff, was always saying how she was always on time, how she never really missed a class because she knew how important, like, it was to her career and to her education and stuff. And she especially never missed tests unless something happened. And so she was actually said in an interview that I had watched about Holly's case, saying, like, you know, when Holly didn't show up and I'm taking this test and she's not next to me, like, my first thought is, oh my God, something's wrong. Maybe she got into a car accident. Maybe something happened with her brother. Like, because she knew that she wouldn't miss it unless it was like an end all be all. So around 7:45 in the morning, a male neighbor heard what he thought was the sound of cats fighting. And at the same time, another neighbor across the pond. So these both of these neighbors live across the pond, but at different sides. And so another neighbor across the pond heard what sounded like someone screaming, "No, get away!" Now, again, out in the middle of nowhere, absolutely, like, and it was a very faint scream, so she really couldn't be sure of what she was hearing, but she knows she heard it. So this causes the dogs to start kind of like barking, and in turn waking up Clint inside. Getting up, Clint looked out one of the windows and he noticed two people standing outside. One of them was obviously his sister Holly, and the other one looked like her boyfriend Drew.
So he wasn't sure.
No. So the man who Holly was talking to was actually facing away from Clint. Plus, you know, he had just woken up, and I know it takes me a while to register things in the morning when I first wake up. You can have a full on conversation with me, and I won't remember it 20 minutes later because I don't have coffee in me. Like, but Clint said the guy was wearing camo from head to toe, was a white male with dark hair, about 5'10", and about 300 pounds, give or take, with a black object Clint thought was a turkey collar. Now, again, Darden is a hunting town. Darden and Parsons are both hunting towns. Camo-clad people were not uncommon in this town. Like, it was everybody from their grandma to a toddler wore camo. And for those of you non-hunting savvy people who don't know, a turkey collar is basically when you go out turkey hunting, which again was really big in this area. Like, I mean, really big. It's a little, like, I guess, whistle type thing that you blow into, and it makes the sound of a turkey, and it makes all the turkeys come towards the sound, and then you can kill the turkeys. So he thought that the guy was wearing a turkey collar, and the description fit Drew. So even though Holly looked upset, Clint actually thought, you know, maybe they were just having a fight. You know, they were young, they were a couple, couples fight, it's not the big deal. Now, at the same time Clint was watching Holly and this man, Karen, her mother, had actually gotten a phone call from the neighbor who heard the screaming, and Karen was at work right now. And I can't really figure out who called the cops first, because different sources say Karen did and the others say the neighbors did. But I honestly think that both of them called the cops around the same time. But Karen instantly knew that something was wrong. Like, she knew. Holly was supposed to be gone long before now, because I think her test started at like 7. And when Karen had gotten up that morning to go into work, Holly was up studying already, and that was, I think, at like 5:30 or whatever. So Holly was already up; she was already going. So Karen was like, she should already be gone. And so Karen calls Clint, and he tells her, "Yeah, no, Holly's still here. She was led into the woods by someone that he assumed was Drew." And she said, "That's not Drew. Oh my God, that's not Drew." She then told him to go get the gun and shoot the person that was out there with Holly. This is when she places another call to the police, quoting, "My neighbor heard someone hollering, and my son can't find my daughter, and her car is still here, and he saw someone in full camo," unquote. Now, again, the cops had already been called about the screaming, so somebody was already on their way to check out the area, but Karen was like, "No, someone has my kid now."
So, okay, first of all, I know that it's a hunting town, but she wanted him to just go out and shoot someone. I feel like she was missing a lot of information there. Like, I mean, okay, so right now, with the information that you've given, okay, that we're all listening to, what you're saying is, so Clint got up, he looked at the window, and he saw her standing there with somebody that he thought was Drew.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, some of the neighbors heard screaming.
And
And
Karen
so,
told him that it wasn't Drew.
right. And so, right. And so I would be concerned, obviously. And I suppose if it was my kid, I'd be like, can you just like go rough that person up? But I don't know. I feel like she's jumping a few steps. Like, did she know that something like did she know something Clint or Holly didn't know about? And how did she know it wasn't Drew?
So I honestly think, like looking back on it, I honestly think Karen probably didn't mean to like go out and shoot him. I think she meant like, take the gun and go out and be intimidating and make him go away. Because I don't think she meant like go out and shoot him, but like in her panic, she that's how she said it. Clint thought it was crazy as well. Like, he was like, I'm not going to go out and just shoot this random person. He was sure it was probably Drew until his mom told him it wasn't. Apparently, Karen had already talked to Drew when the neighbor called her about the screaming. So when the neighbor called her, before the police were called anything, when the neighbor called her, or at least before Karen called the police, the neighbor probably already did, she had called Drew and confirmed that he was actually over on her family's other property on the other side of town, turkey hunting with a friend, and he had been seen by multiple people as well, including Karen's parents who owned the property. They actually came out and was like, "Hey, what are you doing out here?" And he was like, "Oh, Karen gave me permission to come out here and go turkey hunting this morning and everything." And he was actually seen later at work at the time that he was supposed to be at work. So she knew it wasn't him. Like, she had confirmed, she knew. She was like, that's why she was so urgent at Clint getting Holly out of there, especially when she heard that this guy was just leading her kid into the woods. But by the time all this was relayed, Holly had already gone in the woods with this guy in camo, and Clint remembered seeing, like, he was basically holding her shoulder as they walked there. But because he was, like, basically playing phone tag with his mom, and he was, like, trying to figure out, like, what the heck was going on, he didn't really run outside until after. So Karen comes speeding home, and she gets there by 9 a.m., and the cops are already there and starting to talk to Clint. They ended up going to the carport where Holly's car was and where Clint had last seen Holly and the man, and they found over 50 spots of blood. Like, the largest one being about the size of a baseball or like an apple, that was said in one of the documentaries I had watched. And it was all still wet, so it was fresh. And so they ended up taking samples of it and they tested it and they sent it in. It later came back in the investigation as belonging to Holly, so it was proof that she had been beaten before she was taken into the woods. They also found a fresh footprint in the dirt of a Croc shoe, like, like the Crocs and stuff and everything. But nobody in the Bobo's house wore those kind of shoes, so they knew it belonged to whoever took Holly. Friends at Holly's nursing school were actually like finishing up their tests and everything, and the teacher had already gotten the news, but she was waiting for everybody to finish their tests. And she ended up informing him. She was like, there's something that happened to Holly. She's been kidnapped.
News travels fast in a small town, I
Yeah.
suppose. I mean, I can't imagine that would be. I can understand waiting to the end of the test because that would be really hard to hear. But also
Mhm.
at the same time, like, I don't know, like, I feel like the beginning of this is so strange and disjointed, and I get it's because of, people's emotions and everything else. Um, I don't know. It feels just like it feels weird.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of information that's missing because it was first account from Holly. So
Yeah. And so it we're going to be getting a lot more into the information and stuff later in the case, but
yeah,
it was, and I kind of feel for like Clint too, because it's like, he probably feels like if he had just gone out there to see what was going on like 2 minutes before, maybe all of this could have been avoided and stuff. And so I
maybe, or
really
he could
do.
have been killed too.
Yeah, I really do feel for him and everything, because it's kind of like this, like, well, shoulda, coulda, woulda type situation.
Always survivor's guilt.
So, oh yeah. So almost instantly, searches started for Holly. Like I said, everybody in the town was connected. Everybody knew Holly. Everybody loved Holly. Sheriff Keith Bird was actually in charge of it, and Tennessee Bureau of Investigations got involved as well as the FBI. So friends were texting, they were calling Holly, they got no answer. It was going to voicemail. Like, they were texting her saying, if you're reading this, hang on, we're coming for you, we're looking for you. Like, because people were still hoping that maybe she had just gotten lost. Maybe something happened and she was just lost in the woods somewhere and she was waiting for them to come find her. Volunteers were out in droves. The sheriff was actually kind of worried about evidence being
Tampered, yeah.
tampered with, like messed with and stuff, just because of how many volunteers there were. And it actually took about 2 hours to get everything set up so that way they could start doing grid searches. But and they were searching the woods all around Holly's house. They were searching the pond, the back roads, everything for any clues of her. The Bobo's pastor, Don Franks, actually ended up coming over and sitting with the family as all this was going on. Holly was actually slated to sing in church the next weekend, had been working on a song for it. There's videos and different documentaries of her singing in church, and she really did have a lovely voice and everything, and she enjoyed it, and it was something that she liked doing, and she loved singing with her friends. And so he was seeing the interview saying like how hard it was to watch her parents go through this, and like he couldn't really do anything except to sit there and pray with them, because that's all you can. And you could really see in like a lot of the documentaries I watched just like how much these people loved Holly, because they weren't able to do this documentary without like crying or getting teared up or getting choked up and stuff. So searching continued into the day, April 14th, into the next day, April 14th, for several acres. Like, I mean, like they were going all over. It was then determined with the use of scent dogs, Holly was actually taken to a local logging trail about 300 yards from her house and put into a vehicle and then taken away, which means that it was somebody who knew the town, because these logging roads, like, Port Angeles, we have logging roads all over, and if you're not from around there, you're not going to know like where they go, where they stop, what's going on, like stuff like that. So it was somebody who knew the town. The man who had actually heard the supposed cats fighting even said he saw a white truck speeding away between his house and the Bobo house that morning, of like after Holly had supposedly vanished. And another lady said she saw the same truck a little further down the road later that day. Due to the interaction, Clint saw all the law enforcement involved, figured it was a planned abduction, but they had absolutely no reason, like, why at the moment.
Well, and it had to be somebody who, knew her, knew where she lived, which, I mean, in a small town, that's
Yeah.
not abnormal. But showing up in camo says that there was some premeditation involved with it.
Well, and especially knowing that, like, her parents wouldn't be home.
Right.
Like, Clint wasn't even supposed to be home. That's the thing. The only reason he was home is because his class got canceled.
But then again, I mean, we're talking a small town where everybody knows everything about everybody.
So while they were searching on the 14th, they actually ended up finding Holly's lunchbox 3 miles away from the house. They figured out it was hers because of the design and the giant H on it, because everybody in the South loves to monogram everything. Plus, her mother confirmed that it did belong to her daughter. So while these searches were going on, outside, not inside law enforcement, so not like the town sheriff and stuff, but like the TBI and FBI, focused in on Clint. So even though law enforcement in the town and everybody in the town was like, there's absolutely no way that Clint would do anything, they were zeroed in on him because he was technically the last person to see Holly alive at the time. He took 2 polygraphs, underwent 17 hours of interviewing, something that was really hard for the family and friends, like I said, who knew Clint didn't have anything to do with his sister going missing. He loved her.
Yeah.
Drew was
Plus, he had an
also
alibi.
kind of not really. Kind of not really. Like, he was the only person at home besides Holly.
Oh, Clint. I was thinking Drew. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Clint would be the last one to see her alive. And yeah.
So Drew was also investigated, but like Clint, he was ruled out not only because cell phone records corroborated his ally, but like I said, there were other people who had seen him in the area as well, and he had shown up for work on time. As I said before, Karen had given him permission to go turkey hunting on her family's land on the other side of town. And so on April 16th, during group searches, a group found stuff belonging to Holly. They knew it belonged to her because it was note cards from her classes with her name on it. It had homework with her name on it. There's school books and a receipt that had her name and phone number on it from like a gas station. And now law enforcement were obviously worried because, if you've never been to Tennessee, we have it's wooded, especially in the rural areas of Decatur County, which is where Darden and Parsons were located and stuff. And so they have the Tennessee River on one side that's like 53 miles long, and there's tons of rock quarries, caves, hills, woods, springs, other areas that Holly could be. And they were only able to search small portions at a time. So once they cleared Clint and Drew, they started looking for other suspects, including local sex offenders in the area. One of these guys was Terry Britt.
So, other than the obvious, did they have any reason to suspect Terry specifically?
Well, Terry had been charged with stalking several women. He also fit the description that Clint gave to the police about the man he saw. Holly also fit his victimology. She had blonde hair, she was short, she was petite, she was easy to overpower. However, he swore up and down that he had never met Holly. Everybody in Holly's life swore up and down that she never met him. And so the police really couldn't do anything other than consider him a person of interest at the time. Soon after, police were able to get cell phone pings of Holly's phone. And now, because they didn't have the physical device, they really had to jump through hoops to get the cell phone provider to let them track it. Nowadays, it's a lot easier. I'm not going to go into it just because it's confusing, but it was still only when 2G and 3G were like back in like its infancy stages. So like we just started coming out with 2G and 3G at that time when it
Sort of.
came when it
I can
came to,
actually speak to this, to be honest, because I was selling. It was right before. It was right around the time I started selling cell phones, and
well,
3G was the top tier at the time, and they
yeah,
were developing LTE.
yeah.
So,
But they
yeah,
were still sort of kind of like in the early stages. So it's like, whereas now we can get a ping down on a phone to literal blocks. Like I can, like, you, like, oh, hey, this, I don't know where I am. Oh, okay, well, you're here. Like you can get it down to literal blocks. Back then it was really only quadrants. So for example, if you pinged my phone right now, you can get my location to my house directly. There it is. Back then it was just, oh, this was the cell tower it was last by.
yeah.
So what they did is they pinged the last few locations of Holly's phone from her house and realized it was actually going in the direction of Terry Britt's house. So her phone was hitting the cell towers on the way to his house. And police were able to get a search warrant, search the house and his property. They brought in cadaver dogs. They got a hit on something, but like other than that, they didn't really find anything relating to Holly at the house. So it could have been, dead animal or something like that. Plus, he had a pretty good alibi. He was in the next town over buying a bathtub at a salvage supply place around the time that Holly had gone missing. He also had a receipt for it, like a handwritten receipt, and the cashier, when they went in to go talk to the people who owned the salvage supply place, remembered seeing him in there. So, again, the police were kind of back to nothing.
Mhm.
So, enter in Shane Austin, Jason Autry, and Zach and Dylan Adams. Now, Dylan and Zach were brothers, and Jason was Shane's cousin. People around town called them the A team because of their last names, because they all started with an A. And they were not good guys at all. Like, I'm talking, all of them had records with drugs, guns, other issues with the law. Like, they cooked meth, they sold meth. Like, they were not good guys. And though they didn't run in the same circle as Holly, they all knew of each other because, again, small town. In fact, Holly and a friend had like a weird run in with them before.
All right, I'm gonna need some details on that one.
So, well, a few weeks before Holly was abducted, there was the annual Coon Hunt Festival because, of course, a town like this would have a Coon Hunt Festival. And this was a huge festival in town every year. I'm talking like it's like a fair. Like they got
Mhm.
rides, they got attractions, they got show dogs, they got awards, they got like everything.
Yeah.
So Holly and Drew went on a double date with mutual friends and they were having a good time. They were enjoying themselves. They were like seeing everybody. That was when the friend they were with, she got kind of like a weird vibe. She felt like somebody was watching them and it kind of really creeped her out. She was quoted in I believe it was either the testimony in court or a interview that she did saying, quote, he had this look like he was staring at us. I had never seen this guy before. He just kept staring at us. He had his phone in his ear and he looked down and then he looked back up at us. He'd watch for 3 or 4 seconds and then he'd look back down again and then he'd look back at us. He did that about 4 or 5 times. And the fourth or fifth time, I just kind of got that eerie feeling, that creepy feeling that maybe he was looking at me or he was looking at Holly, end quote. And during the eventual trial, somebody named Jamie Darnell, who's actually a friend of Zach's, mentioned, quote, Holly was on stage and walking around the coon hunt, and they basically stalked her a bit. Karen even went up and introduced herself as Holly's mom, end quote. So then the investigators start looking more and more into these four boys. Like, this is weird. We need to look into it. Shane came into work the day after the abduction, and he was actually covered in scratches that got noticed by coworkers who ended up calling the police. So they bring Shane in and interrogate him and make him take a polygraph that he passes. They interrogate the other boys, make them take polygraphs as well, but same thing. They all pass. They all claim they don't know where Holly was. They all claim they don't know, like, what happened to Holly. And they all say that they were hanging out together and hadn't seen Holly that day. Even though the police knew something was off, they really didn't have enough evidence to hold them.
Yeah, that's usually how it happened. But I mean, I get administering polygraph tests. I do, because they show if somebody's lying. But it's really frustrating because none of it's admissible in court either
No,
way.
it's not. But I think the reason why they do it and everything is because if somebody fails that polygraph,
Oh, yeah.
then they can hammer into that, like, and then eventually come up with something else. But if they don't fail the polygraph, then it's like, okay, well, they're either really good at passing this or they really have no, and the whole innocent until proven guilty. But it was just the fact that they didn't really have anything else to go on with these guys.
Right. Well, I mean, look at the Chris Watts case, right? Like,
Yeah.
we were able to get him to confess some of the truth by having him fail a polygraph. So I'm not saying I
Exactly.
don't see the value in it. It's just, it's so frustrating because they're not admissible in court, but that's a whole
Exactly.
tangent for another day.
Oh yeah.
So,
So while all this was going on, the community was still rallying around finding Holly. Posters, flyers, ribbons, news segments. Holly's cousin Whitney Duncan, who's actually a country singer who had been on, I think, the 5th season of Nashville Star, she was part of the band called Post Monroe, put out Holly's name in the media and was bringing attention to the case with her fame. Holly and Whitney were actually really close as well and stuff, and so uh, she was very affected by this, like, obviously, because it was her family. So people were determined to bring Holly home no matter what. Easter Sunday, 2011, 11 days after Holly went missing, her cell phone was actually found by a friend who was part of the search party. The phone, so in an interview, she was quoted as saying the phone looked like it had just been placed there. The SIM card was missing inside, and when it was eventually found later, all the contact numbers were erased off of it. So the names were all still there in her contacts, but all the numbers were gone. But other than her cell phone, there was really no sign of Holly, and the case went cold. On September 15th, 2013, 2 years after Holly was abducted, Dylan Adams was arrested on charges that were completely unrelated to Holly. I think they were either drug charges or like gun charges or something. Like, they were completely unrelated. And so he gets arrested and he tells police that he wants to confess to what happened to Holly.
oh, so he's trying to get an upper hand in the situation.
I don't know. Like, I don't know, like, the inner workings of it. I don't know if, like, they offered him something, but, like, he just wanted to confess.
He could have, I mean, so we see that, I mean, I can't say we see this, but it's done occasionally where they're caught for something and they're like, well, can I maybe get some kind of a plea deal if I give you information about this because I know you want it?
Well, yes and no. He was a few fries short of a Happy Meal. He wasn't all there mentally. His IQ was actually extremely low. So this kid was someone who probably wouldn't have the foresight to think of that. I honestly think it was maybe just like, he got caught. Maybe he was living with the guilt. Like, who
Could
knows?
be.
Maybe something happened and he felt like he needed to turn against the other guys. Like, I don't know. But I don't think he went in there going, oh, well, I'll give you this if you do this. Because he wouldn't have gotten charged too bad with the other stuff, even if, like, he didn't say anything. So apparently he just walks in and was like, I'm going to give you information about her murder. So the detectives automatically were like, what?
I mean, he didn't
So,
just waltz in. He was caught,
well,
but
yeah, but like, he walks into in the interview room and it's like, I'm going to give you information about her murder. And so in the interview with him, you can hear the detective talking to him about what happened that day. So this is just kind of like a snippet from the interview tapes that I heard. And it was, quote, the detective, was Holly Bobo kidnapped, unquote. Dylan Adams, yes, sir. The detective, was she raped? Dylan Adams, yes, sir. The detective, raped by you? Dylan Adams, yes, sir, unquote. It was at that moment that Dylan basically just opened up his mouth and told them everything. Dylan had said Zach, Jason, and Shane had kidnapped Holly, but all four of them, so Dylan included, had raped Holly. Law enforcement had arrested Dylan on the charges he was originally brought in on and started kind of looking more into the other guys because all they had was Dylan's word. They didn't have any other evidence. They didn't have Holly's body, like nothing. Everything was just basically circumstantial, and they didn't know if Dylan was telling the truth to kind of save his own skin or what was going on. So in February of 2014, after Dylan had confessed, the police get a search warrant to search Dylan and Zach's home, but nothing was found there. No DNA, no fingerprints, no sign that Holly had been at the house like Dylan had said. The police checked phone records and saw that all four men were in constant contact the day of and the day after Holly was abducted. They also went back to Clint and realized Shane looked just like the guy that was following Holly into the woods. So Shane is brought in, and law enforcement basically tells him, we will give you immunity if you can tell us where you put Holly. Not exactly the best thing, but at this point, they were honestly looking for Holly's body to convict Zach.
Why just Zach? I mean, if all four of them were involved, why was he like the main perpetrator in their eyes?
Because apparently, all of them were bad, but Zach was the worst. This would not have been the first time that Zach did something like this. Like, not murder to the extent, but the stalking and the harassment and the rape. And you see, Zach was a really troubled teen. His parents divorced when he was a teenager, and he really didn't handle it well at all. So his mother had ended up getting married again to another man, and Zach was already pretty heavy into drugs and selling drugs at this point. And I'm not talking like, oh, he was smoking pot and selling it. Like, I'm talking like meth. Like, he was smoking meth and cooking it and selling it. And
fun story, anecdote. A few years, this was number of years ago. I was still in school, was living with my parents. There was a house across the street that was they had a meth lab, and they would throw parties and people would be doing meth and heroin at the same time. They were the neighborhood reported it because we have a neighborhood watch, and they were doing the stakeout at my house because my dad knew a lot of the officers. And so when the police had enough evidence and they went to knock on the door, they were so high they just invited the cops in. Like, yeah, and yeah, they were cooking meth, they were doing meth, they were doing hair, they were doing it all at the same time. So drugs fuck you up.
Oh yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons why Zach was the way he was, is because he just fried his brain cells. So when he was 19, on February 7th, 2004, Zach got into an argument with his mom at her house. He wanted more money for drugs. She obviously said no. And Joe, his stepdad, was home in the back when he heard a gunshot. When he came out, Cindy, Zach's mom, was sitting in a pool of her blood. Zach had shot her point blank, and though he felt no remorse, Sydney refuses to press charges. She did what she did many times before Zach, and she covers up for him. She basically is like, oh, it was an accident. Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And so when Holly went missing, Zach's social media posts got weirder. He was actually seen in a picture of himself dressed in camo with a caption that said, quote, "Who am I looking for?" unquote. And then another post the day of Holly's kidnapping was posted at 7:39 a.m. saying, quote, "You know you never was, you stupid whore," unquote. Dylan had also said in his confession that he'd seen Holly at Zach's house the day she went missing, but Zach had warned him not to say anything, and that he was also wearing camo and Crocs.
God. So this actually sounds a little like, obviously he's a troubled teen. He's got some issues, and his mom isn't helping much.
No, she
and
basically
I
just
don't
covered
know
up for
enough
him.
about the situation, but this actually almost sounds like an actual issue, something like autism, to be honest, like high functioning autism. If he's not dealing with any sort of remorseful emotions, any sort
Or he's
of,
just a sociopath.
he could also just be a sociopath. Yeah.
I don't think autism has anything to do with it. I think he's just a freaking sociopath. I think he's just fried his brain enough with drugs that he's just a sociopath at this point.
I just, there's some little signs here I'm noticing that kind of point in that direction, but you're right, it could just be
unfortunately, the lines blur with that, but
they do.
Now, Zach was actually arrested on an unrelated charge in February of 2014. Okay. So this is a few years after Holly went missing. Now, Zach was actually arrested on an unrelated charge in February of 2014. On February 28th, Zach was arrested for assault. Amber Bray, the sister of the girl who was dating Zach at the time, said that he held a gun to her head and threatened to kill her. Bray also said that he pulled a knife and threatened to gut her. However, Trisha, Zach's girlfriend, Amber's sister, came forward and said it was untrue due to the fact that Amber was in love with Zach and wanted to get back at him for not dating her. However, it was enough for him to be charged and put into jail because, obviously. So now Shane accepted the law enforcement's deal. He would lead them to Holly for full immunity. That, along with Dylan's confession, helped lead the indictment of Zach and Jason as well. The press conference where this was announced was absolutely heartbreaking. Like, they were honestly expecting the conference to be held because they had no clue what they were going to be announcing. They were honestly expecting them to be like, we found Holly, we're bringing her home. They were not expecting, I mean, they probably knew, but they weren't expecting it. As they're saying it, you can audibly hear someone cry, oh God, when they say the charges against the men. Aggravated kidnapping and first-degree felony murder. Everyone was shocked, but it confirmed their worst fears, that Holly would be coming home to them, but not in the way they wanted her to. Jason, Zach, and Dylan were all indicted for the murder and the perpetration of kidnapping, murder and the perpetration of rape, and premeditated murder. All three of them pled not guilty. Shane wasn't able to lead the police to Holly's body, so he was getting indicted as well.
So did he just not know where it was, or did he think he knew where it was?
No, he didn't. I don't think he knew where it was. We're going to get to a little bit more in that of why they can't fully say why he didn't know where it was, but I think he tried to make a guess based off of what Zach probably told him, but because he couldn't lead them to her body, like, they are now like, hey, you're getting charged for this as well. So I was actually really confused at first by the difference between indictment and charges because, you kind of hear them thrown around. You don't know. It's lawyer speak. So according to goldmanwetzel.com, which is a law office that I found, they say, quote, being charged with a crime means the prosecutor filed the charges. An indictment means the grand jury filed the charges against the defendant, unquote. So basically the charges, prosecutor looks over all the info submitted by the police, all the witness statements, all like the evidence, and decides to file charges or not. It usually requires a preliminary hearing for a judge to determine if charges are enough to take for a case to be brought to trial. With indictments, the prosecutor presents the case to a grand jury and they decide if it's sufficient enough to move forward and does not require a prelim hearing. So, and those usually are for like federal murder cases and stuff like that and drug charges and everything. So September 17th, 2014, 3 years after Holly was taken, Larry Stone and his cousin got into a truck looking for ginseng plants. Now, ginseng plants are something that is a huge tradition in Tennessee. Now, if you're not part of the culture, it's actually illegal for you to harvest ginseng plants. They're used for many things, which I'm not even going to get into here because it could be a whole hour-long segment of how cool this stuff is. But that was something that his family do. They were hunters of ginseng plants and stuff. So that's what they did. They would plant the seeds, they would go out, they would cultivate them also.
Yeah.
So he said that before they got to a certain area, he just had a really bad feeling. And we always talk about trust your gut feeling, trust your gut instincts. If your gut is telling you, get the hell out of there, get the hell out of there. And he just couldn't really explain it. So they ended up coming up on the ginseng plants that they were looking for, and they found a bucket. It's a white bucket. Larry picked it up thinking it was just something that, somebody left behind, like maybe a hunter had forgotten it, stored stuff in it. And when he picked it up, a skull fell out. He knew it was Holly, and he immediately called the police. And he was actually quoted in an interview saying, quote, it was like a feeling come over me. It was kind of like a happy but sad feeling. And then I actually broke down and sat beside a big tree and literally just bawled my eyes out, unquote. And he eventually went on to say that it was an honor being able to bring Holly back home to her mama. And just the way this guy spoke about it, like, you could tell that even though he had never met Holly a day in his life, like, he not only was he affected because he found her remains, but he got to be the one that brought Holly home. And so According to Radar Online, Holly's skull was found to have a bullet hole in the back of her head exiting through her jaw, and that was the cause of her death. Other parts of her remains were found as well, including teeth, jawbone, and ribs. Presence of fractures on Holly's skull showed that she was actually hit in the back of the head before she died, so before she was shot. And I saw pictures of it because they used it in the trial and stuff. Obviously they used her remains in the trial as evidence and stuff. And so I saw pictures of it, and you can see like the bullet hole and then like fractures all around her head. Like it looked like she had just like been just beaten. And her wallet, driver's license, purse, keys, and promise ring that Drew gave her were all found with her. And even though they knew it was Holly, they had to have dental records confirm, and it was indeed her, and they knew she was gone for good. It was really a bittersweet moment to the family and friends. They were happy that she had her back, but they were sad because it wasn't in the way that they wanted. Her remains were also found behind a cell tower that was about 5 miles from Zach's house, who was also digging himself a deeper hole.
I mean, could you get deeper at this point?
Apparently, and
That's what she said.
he's been in prison, like he's been in jail this entire time on other charges and stuff, and going like he's been running his mouth to a lot of people while inside and when he was outside of prison, telling people, quote, "I'll do to you to what I did to Holly Bobo," unquote, or quote, "If you don't shut up, you'll end up in the hole next to her," unquote. And more notably, no body, no crime.
Which is something we've been upset about many, many times.
Exactly.
On our podcast.
And he would go around saying, "Oh, they can't prove it was me because no body, no crime." Like,
you
dude,
don't always need a body for that.
Especially if you're sitting there spouting it out.
Like an idiot, yeah.
So, in February 2015, police got an interesting call. A body had been found in a hotel room in Florida. The police identified it as Shane Austin. Apparently, he had gone to Florida, hung himself because he knew he was about to be indicted on murder charges, and decided that this was his only option out. But that didn't matter. The police still had Zach, Dylan, and Jason. And in July of 2017, 6 years after Holly went missing, Jason had been in prison for about 2 to 3 years at this point on, again, unrelated charges, and agreed to cut a deal with the state and testify. So on September 11th of that year, the trial begins, and it was a 2 full weeks of testimony. It took me about a week to get through all of this testimony video. Yeah. And like, it's all online. I'll have a link to the YouTube page that it's on and everything on our website, truecrimeandchill.com, if you want to sit down and watch it. And it's a lot of it is heavy stuff because you're hearing in graphic detail like what happened to Holly. I'm admitting a lot of it just because, but like you're hearing it and you're hearing like her friends and family testify and all this other stuff. It's really sad, but it's really eye-opening. So Jason takes the stand and testifies that on the morning Holly was abducted, he gets a phone call from Zach telling him, "Hey, meet me at Shane's trailer," which was near Holly's house. When Jason thought Zach needed help cooking meth because, again, that's what they did. So when he shows up, Shane, Dylan, and Zach are all there. Quote, "Zach was standing at the door and he said, 'I need you to help me bury this body,' unquote." Jason thought the body was somebody who owed Zach drug money. So, like, he shows up and his friend's like, "Hey, I need you to help me bury this body." He's like, "Hey, okay." And, like, don't get me wrong, I would bury a body for you, but, like, under the right circumstances. So, even when Jason realizes that it was Holly, he still agrees to help, and he and Zach load the body up and head to the river. Now, I would like to also make a point here that Zach has a white pickup truck. The same truck that witnesses saw speeding down the highway after Holly was kidnapped. Jason had brought to Zach's attention that there were no shovels or pickaxes or anything in the truck, so he told him to gut her and put her in the deep part of the river so the body wouldn't float. A lot of hunters do that for like animal carcasses when they're done like doing that and everything. But Jason said that when they stopped, they pulled Holly off the truck and onto the ground. They heard a sound of distress coming from her. So she was still alive at this point. He was quoted as saying, quote, "That bitch is still alive," unquote. So Zach grabbed the .32 from his truck, picked up the end of the blanket where Holly's head would be, and shot her in the head. Holly was officially dead. They end up hearing other people in the area. I think it was quoted as saying like they heard a boat in the area, so they couldn't really dump her in the river. So they end up loading Holly's body back up into the truck and they got out of there. Zach dropped Jason off and left. And Jason had no clue what happened to Holly after that. And when he asked Zach, he said he threw her out over Kelly Ridge.
I mean, first of all, what's sad is if she had not made that noise, it's possible she could have escaped.
Probably not. The extensive fractures to her skull had shown that like she was pretty not able to like move at that point. The noise that she was probably unconscious at the time. And the noise that she made was just like her reacting like to being thrown on the floor and stuff and she was unconscious. She was beaten pretty badly. And if you look at the pictures of the skull fractures and stuff, it was bad. But so it really is.
Meanwhile, her parents are having to sit there and listen to all of this.
Holly's entire family was in that courtroom. Like, they sat through all 2 weeks of testimony. They sat through every gruesome detail, everything. Along with Jason, the prosecution had about half a dozen different people who'd been in contact with Zach or who had been incarcerated with him that all testified that Zach had admitted he was the one who killed Holly. He said things like, quote, "It was fun. I couldn't have picked a prettier bitch," unquote. Quote, "You tell him if he don't keep his mouth shut, I'ma put him in a hole beside her," unquote, and a lot worse. So on September 22nd, 2017, 6 years after Holly was killed, Zach Adams was convicted of murder, rape, and premeditated murder. Karen actually testified at the trial as well and called Zach out as he actually refused to look at her as she was on the stand. And turns out she was his teacher when he was younger. Like, she taught the kid who murdered her daughter. Like, she was quoted as saying, quote, "I would like Mr. Adams to look at me when I speak to him. I know that she begged for her life because my daughter loved and enjoyed life, but you chose to take that from her," unquote. The family accepted life without parole plus 50 years instead of the death penalty for Zach. Dylan pled guilty and took an offered plea and will get 35 years with no parole. Jason was also sentenced to 8 years but was released in September of 2020 as he already served a lot of his sentence while the trial was going on.
I mean, only 8? Seriously?
Yeah. However, he was arrested again in December of 2020. So he was only out for like a few months when he was arrested again on an unrelated charge due to carrying a firearm and drug charges. So if he gets convicted of that, he could face 20 years. I couldn't find anything more on that, so I don't know if he actually got convicted. He was arrested in 2020, so it was like at the height of the coronavirus and stuff and everything, and so like trials were being pushed back left and right. So I don't know if he's been convicted yet. I do know that he's just sitting in prison right now, though. So, but I don't know if he's been convicted. So a lot of the people were still wondering, like, what was the motive in all this? And so one of the detectives in the case said that Shane or Zach probably had a crush on Holly, and when they made an advance, she turned them down, and it turned violent, and it eventually led to her death, which honestly is really the only thing I could think of, because there were rumors, and there was somebody who posted on a YouTube video, because you know 2020 sometimes like post small segments on YouTube and everything, like, oh, this is of the show and everything, and there was an interview with Clint talking about Holly. And one of the comments underneath there, it was, "Holly died because of Clint's drug abuse. Clint is just too scared to say it because he's such a pussy." But there was nothing I can find that showed that Clint was involved in drugs. And there was also another rumor that was basically saying that like Holly was working for Tennessee Bureau of Investigations as an undercover, trying to like help trying to like catch Zach and his crew with like making the drugs and everything, and they found out and they killed her and stuff. And it's like, none of these theories seem plausible. Like they're just that. They're wild theories that people like to put out there. Honestly, I kind of agree with the unrequited love one. Like maybe Shane like had a crush on Holly, and when she turned him down, he got violent and something happened.
All right, so there's a few things that I'm thinking could be it. Now I can tell you, obviously not definitively, but if she's in nursing school, no way in hell does she have time to have a job like undercover investigating for the FBI.
Exactly. Like,
I'm just
that's
gonna
why
throw that out there.
I remember reading that theory, and I was like,
That's somebody
"Who
who doesn't
is up
know.
with these?"
That's somebody who doesn't know how much what it takes to get through nursing school.
Yeah.
I have lots of family. I have cousins, my mom. I've got friends that are all nurses, and I can tell you the stress they went through in nursing school, just from nursing school. Like they couldn't even really like. I had one friend who was doing pizza delivery, and he struggled with pizza delivery
Yeah.
to keep up in nursing school. So
Yeah.
let's start there, shall
Yeah,
we?
I was like, "Who
Um,
comes up with these?
the
What?"
the unrequited love one does make some sense if it's somebody who felt emasculated
It probably was
by
that too.
her rejection. But it also, so there's a really interesting book I've been reading, The 48 Laws of Power. And it's possible that they just, even if there wasn't like an unrequited thing there, they just could have felt emasculated by how pretty she was.
Yeah. And
She was a pretty girl.
yeah, and it happens. Like, I mean, I it's just absolutely insane. Like, it's absolutely insane because their actions ultimately took away somebody who was loved and
Right.
cared about and
I'm not
cherished.
saying any of those
And
reasons are good reasons. And
no, no, and it,
honestly, it is possible. I'm not saying it really makes a lot of sense, but it's possible that Clint was a client and something went wrong, and so in order to get back at him, they hurt his sister.
well, see, and that's what people were thinking. Like, that's one of the main theories that was circulating, is that Clint had gotten into some issues with Zach, like he owed him money or whatever. And the reason why Shane was at the house that day was to talk to Clint and get the money from Clint, but then they saw Holly and saw it as a motive opportunity. But at the same time, like I said, nothing, like, no one could corroborate Clint being into drugs. Like, he didn't hang out with that crowd. But at the same time, as somebody who grew up with an addict as a mom, functioning drug addicts can hide it from their families. And I'm not, and I, before anybody jumps on me, because I know somebody will, I am not saying that Clint was involved in drugs. I'm not saying that he was the reason for his sister's death.
No,
I'm saying that this is a theory that was put out there, and though it sounds plausible, it's probably not true.
probably not. But I mean,
Again,
you
we
did have
don't
the
know because nobody's
testimony.
talking.
You did have the testimony prior that they thought it was somebody who owed him money and that was the body they were burying. So it
Yeah,
doesn't
but
sound like it was really uncommon for him to do nasty, terrible things when it came to people owing him
oh
money.
yeah, oh yeah, no. And so it's
So I
just,
can see why that theory would make sense to some people. I'm not
yeah.
saying it's true. I obviously don't know,
I would
but
like to also tell people, stay out of Reddit forums when you're researching cases like this, because you'll get really mad. Self care is not reading the comments. um. So as I said before, Whitney Duncan was Holly's cousin. Like I said, they were really close, and Whitney actually coached Holly in singing, as she loved to sing in church and other events. She ended up getting together with her band during the trial of Zach and the others, and wrote and released a song for Holly. The video is made up of like old videos of their hometown, and as well as a lot of home videos of Holly. And the lyrics are basically just talking about how much Whitney misses her, how much Holly has missed. And I watched the video last night, and it was just, I was in tears. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, I started bawling watching this video and stuff, because it really captured. And I'll have the video on our Facebook page, and on our website, truecrimeandchill.com, as well. But it really captures like how much Holly was loved. It's just a really beautiful video, and the message that Whitney had with it was just as beautiful as it is heartbreaking. When my cousin, Holly Bobo, went missing over 6 years ago, people started asking when I was going to write a song for her. However, the timing never felt right. The wound was too fresh for me and my family. I have hardly ever been able to talk about it without my emotions taking over. And as time goes by, I've finally been able to realize that what I wanted to say to her. As a songwriter, I feel my purpose is to write about real life, what I know and how I feel, knowing that many others might just relate to what I am going through. I got the idea for Better Place last year, wanting to write it with the people I'm really close with, so I could really say what I wanted to say. I couldn't think of anyone better than Ashley, Shelby, and my cousin Jonathan Singleton. I didn't get the chance to say goodbye to Holly or have a final conversation with her, so this song is my way of filling her in on everything since she's been gone. Life has moved on in so many ways, yet it feels like time still stands still sometimes. But not a day goes by that I don't think about her. With her murder trial approaching, I wanted to release this song to honor her. No matter what happened here on earth, I know she's in heaven and her heart isn't broken, even if ours is. Whitney.
Thank you for listening to True Crime and Chills. For more information, including case notes, photos, and sources, visit our website at truecrimeandchill.com. You can also stay connected with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Look for new episodes from us each week on Tuesdays.